Hi, everybody. This is Maya Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and we are now live on Zoom for our free monthly class that we offer for members of our free Facebook group that's called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And then after we do the live Zoom, then we take the recording of this and we post it on YouTube. So hello to all of our live participants. Hello to everybody on the Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. And hello to everybody on the Psychic Protection Sanctuary YouTube channel. And just a shout out, happy 2025. We finally made it into a new year. And I wasn't planning on doing a little mini forecast, but I'm going to say, the energy of the beginning of this year is a little challenging, but overall, this year is going to be pretty, like for individuals. I'm not speaking about global events, but like for individuals, the energy is a little weird right now, but it's going to get better and it's going to be a nice, steady, sturdy year of like building and moving into the right direction for yourself. So you've got that to look forward to. So if you happen to be somebody who is feeling the weirdness of the energy right now, I truly don't believe the whole year is going to be like this. I think it's just the beginning of the year. And then after that, it's just going to be pretty much on an even keel. So hang in there. So we're doing something a little different today. We haven't done a dual Zoom teaching in quite a while. It's been a couple of years, I think. I did a couple of them with Stephanie a while back, who's our group admin. And today we have Kristie here with us. And for those of you joining live, she's the one with the black hat on, and it says KWAIN. So that's Kristie. And she's a member of my paid program, Spiritual Empowerment Academy. And we've worked together for a while. I will let her introduce herself in a minute. But what we're going to do today is Kristie is going to interview me. And she's going to ask me several different questions that she has collected, that she has thought of herself. And she's also collected questions from the members of our academy, different things that people want to know about me personally, about what it's like doing the work that I do with psychic protection. And if we have time at the end, we'll open it up for you all to post questions as well. But we'll save that to the end. It is okay to use the chat option. I'm not going to be checking that as readily as I always do in the other classes, but you can comment, and the other people watching live will be able to see your comments if you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that, or that sounds cool, or whatever comment that you want to make, you can use the chat for that. So Kristie, would you like to tell everybody about just like a little bit about yourself and your connection with like how we know each other? You can share whatever amount that you want to share.
Yeah, sure. So I started going through a psychic attack about almost 5 years ago. And I was directed by a friend to, check out psychic attack because I was going through it and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about it. And that's when I just Googled and found mine and joined the group immediately. And it took about 2 years to clear my major psychic attack. I I wanted it to be quick, but it wasn't. But with Maya's help of being a teacher and a mentor, I was able to clear it. And now I'm thriving, and so I'm just 2 years from it. And just happy to be here.
Yeah, thank goodness it's been 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been 2 years. I can't believe it. I mean, I believe it, but
Mhm.
yeah.
I'm not going to be sharing any details about your situation. We'll keep that private. But I just wanted to say that your situation was different because almost everybody that I work with in the academy is able to work through the psychic protection issues that they're dealing with
Mm,
within the 12 months.
right.
But you are special. You're special. Because
Yay.
what I remember is like you came in and you were having issues and then you were working through it. But then there was a
Mhm.
certain point where all of a sudden, like a whole other level ramped up
Yeah.
and it took several months to clear that. And then after that, you, um, things have been steadily much better. You've had to use your discernment on like
Oh,
not
yeah.
participating in certain activities still, just to keep your energy clean and clear for a while,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But now, I know so much and have learned so much, even just about myself. I mean, besides psychic protection issues, I mean, that's what I needed in the beginning. And it just has gotten better and better, you know.
Yeah, it does. It gets better.
Yeah.
It's like you have more tool. It's like the psychic protection issues get less.
Yeah.
And because, and I'm just saying like you as like a collective you, the
Hmm.
the psychic protection issues are less and less because you've
Hmm.
cleared out like all the root causes. And then also then even with the issues being less, when something does arise, because living on the planet, there's weird energy all sorts of
Right.
places, um, that each of us has more tools and more
Mm.
confidence. So then we're able to
Yeah.
address it much more quickly. And we've developed our intuition and our inner guidance. And so we right
Right.
away, and I've noticed this with you, like you'll be alerted right away. Oh, you went somewhere and there was something weird. And you're like, oh, and you clear it out right away. So it doesn't have a
Right.
chance to ramp up into insane levels
Right.
of psychic protection issues, right? Yeah, so it does. I mean, I think some of us just will always have to have that awareness of psychic
Hmm.
protection.
Right.
Like we can't just chuck it out and just go anywhere and do anything and not pay attention. Like we all like there's just some sensitivity
Yeah.
about us. But it
Yeah.
gets
There.
better. It gets better because
Mhm.
we've
You know what to
cleared so
do.
much and then we
Right.
know what to do and we nip it in the bud immediately. Because one of the
Immediately.
main problems, like when people first find me, like in your situation,
I
it's
was.
it's like things have had a chance to ramp up and really dig in. And that's
Oh,
why
it
it
was.
takes a while to clear it,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
But
It
when
took.
you nip it in the bud right away, like you've
Then it.
noticed, clears
Yeah.
out very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just you just get the tools, and then it's just using your tools. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but
Yeah, it depends.
it depends.
Yeah.
And I need a little bit more, but mostly it's just using the tools and being so clear as you can, as much as I can, you can.
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
it's not as bad, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It gets a lot easier. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I think this was a
Mhm.
blessing. I mean, just everybody,
Yeah.
FYI, like Stephanie has been my group admin for a long time. She still is. And because of that, she was the first person that I asked because it was like, oh, of course I would have Stephanie. But
Right.
she always has a personal commitment on these nights. And
Mm.
so I see it as like a happy blessing that like, oh,
Yeah.
well, now we get to do this together with Kristie, whereas we wouldn't have met her otherwise. And, maybe at some other time we'll circle back and we can do something with Stephanie as
Yeah,
well.
definitely.
So you want to dive in and just, I know you
Yeah,
have a list
so
of questions. Yeah.
yeah, I have some good questions. I have some simple questions, but they're poignant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just get started then.
Okay. And you guys, I'm an open book.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I'll answer a lot. I mean, I'll share all sorts of things with you guys. So let's
Yeah.
see what Kristie wants to ask.
So my first question is, can you tell me about your first paranormal experience and what age were you? Because I know you're pretty young.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'll share briefly about my first paranormal experience that was positive,
Okay.
and then my first one that was negative, because that's a whole
Right.
other thing.
Right.
So yeah, so I actually, for as long as I can remember, like my
Mm,
first memories, I have some of my oldest memories are paranormal, and I remember two different things. The first was actually both of them happened to be in church, which I know you're going to ask me about later, but I'll mention that
yeah.
my family was raising me as Roman Catholic. And so one of my first memories was that there was this particular church that we were going to. And I remember there was one particular priest, and I would always notice that he had a light around him. I would see his energy.
Mm,
Nobody ever talked about energy. Like, I was Catholic. It wasn't a new age family or anything,
right.
a hippie family or anything like that. They didn't talk about energy or anything like that. So like, I didn't know that it was weird. Like, I didn't know. I just didn't even really tell anybody. But I always saw this, especially around his head. And in the Catholic context, being a kid going to Sunday school, I interpreted it as that he had a halo. I was seeing his halo, like that he was very holy. And
Right.
then I also remember hearing people talking about that priest and saying that he was very special, that he was different than the other priests, that he was very holy, like an exceptionally holy man.
Mhm.
Um, so I remember that. And then I remember also sitting next to my mother, and I was adopted when I was a child. So when I say my mother, I mean like my mom, my parents that adopted me, those were my mom and dad. So I was sitting next to my mom, and I kind of just slipped into like what we might think of as a past life memory, but it was a between lives memory. I remembered before this lifetime. So I was probably like, I'm guessing like 4 years old.
Yeah.
And in real life, I was about 4 years old. And then I slipped into this between lives memory where I was a light. I was a spirit. I was just this light. And I was meeting my mom, my adopted mom, for the first time on the other side. Or like, I don't know if it was our first time. We probably had met before, but it was like we were meeting up in preparation for being together in
Oh,
this
wow.
lifetime. Yeah. And I tugged on my mom's sleeve and I said, Mommy, did I know you before I was born? And she was like, I don't know, kid. I don't know. Maybe. Like, she didn't know but I always remembered that, right? I always
Mhm.
remembered that. I don't recall um, any negative paranormal experiences until so I'm going to say that as an adult, when I've gone back and reflected on
Mhm.
certain times in my life from the adult perspective, I perceive some very negative things happening paranormally, even when I was young. But growing up, I didn't have those memories. Like, I didn't immediately perceive those things. I didn't
Okay.
have like real time perception of a negative being. It wasn't until as an adult looking back from my perspective as someone who does that for my clients, where we explore like, well, what happened to you when you were 3, things
Right.
like that. And I get images. But the real time recognition was when I hit puberty, when I was an adolescent. All of a sudden I was having major spiritual awakening, which happens to a lot of human beings. That's a time when
Yeah.
they're really waking up. And so that's when I had, I don't remember when the first one was, but I had several run ins with demonic beings when I was a teenager. And I also was having spiritual visions, like positive spiritual visions
Yeah.
as a teenager. So I was having like all this stuff. I was getting some support for that because being raised I was still involved with the Catholic Church. And um, even though things aren't perfect with the Catholic Church, they do have an understanding of spiritual warfare. And they wouldn't call it paranormal, but they would recognize what visions are and, dark beings and things like that. So I was able
Okay.
to work with some of the leaders of the high school youth group and get some, and like talk it out and have them like help me understand what was happening. But so as far as psychic and paranormal spiritual experiences, I've had those since I was young.
Mhm.
So it's just always been, and then even like psychic experiences of like premonitions and things like that. I was having premonitory dreams. I don't remember when the first one was, but it was a pretty common thing. I would have a dream about
Right.
somebody that I hadn't seen in a while, and then I would see them. Or I would be with a friend and they would start to ask me something, and I would hear the rest of the question before they had said it. And then I would answer them, and they would get mad at me. And then there were a couple of times when I saw ghosts. And my
Right.
friend said that I was lying, and I was not
Yeah.
lying. But in my first book, Darkness Disguised as Light, I do
Hmm.
talk about some of my stories from when I was younger. I share
Hmm.
some of the stories more in depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the next? Yeah. So I could keep talking and talking, but I'm going to stop and let you
No,
ask your next
no, it's
question.
okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. And so the next question was, how did you cope with the experiences? Like, did you become withdrawn, or did it more
Mhm.
excite you, or did it scare you? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
did it affect you in a
Yeah.
certain?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Let me think about that. Well, so there's a couple of things. First, the positive experiences. I remember being a kid at school swinging really high on the swing set. And I had friends and stuff, but kids sometimes will play by themselves, and I was playing by myself. And I'm hesitating because I think you guys know me well enough. I'm just going to say what I was really feeling even as a young child, and you can interpret it however you want to. I'm not intending it in some like megalomaniac, like ego trip thing or anything like that. But when I was little, I was a little grade school kid, and I knew that I was supposed to be doing something important in this life. I didn't know what, but I
Yeah.
felt this spiritual connection. And it was like,
Hmm.
I knew that I was here for something. And then I continued to feel that my entire upbringing. And then when I graduate, like when I was in college and I graduated college and I was just stepping outside of the box of Catholicism for various reasons. And I remember feeling this kind of sense of like, oh my gosh, like I always felt like I was supposed to do like there was some like spiritual calling. And
Yeah.
now, but I'm stepping away from the Catholic Church, and like I was like a little bit confused for a little while. But of course, we don't have to belong to a specific religion in order to accomplish our spiritual mission. But at that time, that was all that I had known. So there was a little bit of like coping and trying to understand as I was growing up. As far as the negative, that really started to hit me consciously and clearly and knowingly when I was a teenager. I did have periods where I was scared. There was one period of time where I was under attack. And I remember feeling afraid for a couple of weeks. Like I would come home late at night from working at the frozen yogurt shop. You remember TCBY, you guys?
Yeah.
And I would come home, my parents would already be in bed, and I'd be like making sure there was no entity in the room and things like that. And so I think having those experiences when I was young toughened me up
Yeah.
because I couldn't talk to my parents about that stuff. I won't go into the whole
Right.
family dynamics, but
Right.
I mean, it's not uncommon that like, your loved ones don't always understand that stuff. And so again, I did have a couple of church youth group leaders that I could talk to
Yeah.
that I knew that helped give validation and helped me to like regain a feeling of safety.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did have times when I was scared, but I think having those experiences so early on did toughen me up so that um, I was able to like tolerate more as an adult.
Yeah.
Even now in my work, there's not very much that freaks me out, although
Right.
I have a healthy sense of caution
Yeah.
about certain things that we definitely need to be cautious of. But I don't have that. But I'm able to tolerate a lot more. That if someone else had never had any of these experiences, and then all
Right.
of a sudden for the first time at age 52, they see an entity, they would be
Right.
freaking out, or maybe kind of lose their mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, um, so anyway, that's the answer to that question.
The You answered most of them. I was going to ask you, did you notice anything that increased or decreased paranormal activity as you were growing up, negative or positive?
Oh, question. Okay. Gosh, some of this I hadn't really thought of in such a long time. So
Yeah.
this is great. And I know I looked at your questions, but some of these I'm not remembering, and that's good because it's hitting me for the first time. I'm like, oh, great question. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the negative stuff. Like what helped with the negative spiritual activity. Now, I didn't have the whole scope of knowledge and toolbox that I have now
Right.
that I awakened to when I went through my major entity attack in 2016 that I talk about in Darkness Disguised as Light. I didn't have
Right.
all of that, all the different tools. What I had then was the religion that I had been raised with. So I'm just clarifying that there are many ways that we can protect ourselves, but that was the context that I was living in. And
Right.
so when I was in high school, I was sleeping with my rosary around my neck.
Yeah.
And that helped me. I was
Yeah.
saying the Hail Mary prayers. I was saying the prayers of the rosary. And I did acquire a lot of protection from who I call the Divine Mother, because I think now, at this point in my life, I think she has many forms. I
Right.
think she shows up in many cultures, many forms, many religions. But it's this divine mother essence. And there were times where there was major spiritual warfare happening in my bedroom, and I saw a vision of her. I saw her face, and there was
Wow.
this dark entity, and she kicked ass. I'll just say that she fought it for me because I didn't know how.
You
I
didn't
didn't
know.
know about all the things. I didn't know about all the methods that I teach now. So I was using very rudimentary tools back then,
Right.
but I did survive. I made it through. I made it through, but that's what I was utilizing back then.
And so did you mostly turn to her after that, or did you know what I mean? Like, did you rely more on your faith? Like, did it deepen your faith? And, when things were bad, did you immediately call on her?
Yeah. I think it was kind of both and
Hmm.
because I have always been very, very spiritual,
Hmm.
and I just happened to be raised within the context of the Roman Catholic religion. And so I was also very religious.
Okay.
So I was a very religious child, even
Yeah.
before, and I don't mean like in a like Bible thumper, like I wasn't like preaching at people and shoving it down people's throats. It wasn't
Right.
that version. I know there's so
Hmm.
many versions of how different faiths can be represented, and for me, it was you know, uh, I was kind of a weird kid. I was spending a lot of time, even as I mean, I fit in at school, but in my
Yeah.
own private time, I was praying a lot. Now, I want to be clear in my academy and in my interactions, just with all of you and out in the world, that I consider myself interfaith, which means that I work with people of all faiths, and I love all faiths, except for any
Mhm.
faiths that like intentionally are doing evil, because there are faiths that do that. But so I'm very interfaith, but at the time growing up, I was very, very Catholic. And so from the Catholic and Christian perspective, I was spending a lot of time in prayer, praying to Jesus, praying to Mary, doing the rosary, um, and and then we went to church once a week. But I was way more religious than like my family was like go to church on Sunday, religious, and
Mhm.
my dad really believed in the faith. He believed the dogma. I was always like, but why? But why?
But
But
why?
why? But why?
Right.
And it drove him crazy because I was always a questioner, which is why I eventually left the faith because I was like, all this doesn't add up for me.
Hmm.
Um, but he believed in the dogma, like the catechism. He believed in all of the teachings. But mainly it wasn't like a spiritual family that I was raised by. I was the one that was spiritual, spending a lot of time in prayer. And then, so I already was that way. And then when I
Okay.
started going through attacks when I was in high school, um, I was equally um, spiritual and in prayer when I was under attack compared to when I wasn't.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was funny because my parents, so I don't mean any disrespect. I mean, the fact that I was adopted, I kind of laugh. I'm like, I mean, I'm glad that I was adopted by a good family, but it's like, I, they didn't understand how I operated, you know. And
Right.
so I was very interested in my internal world and the spiritual. And when I was a teenager, they were like, they interpreted me as wanting to go out with boys and wanting to have a boyfriend and wanting to do all the teenager things, which I was also sort of interested in. But when I was single, when I was between boyfriends, I have to say, I've never said this to really anybody. I was the happiest. I was spending
Yeah.
time reading, and I don't, this is no disrespect to anyone that I dated or to men or anything,
Right.
but it's more of a commentary on who I am as a person. I just have always been the, the spiritual seeker, I think I was a nun in some past lives. Not all past lives, you know, and
Right.
I really did enjoy dating. I enjoyed dating. I had some really nice boyfriends, had some great fun relationships, some wonderful, I did fall in love. I had some relationships where I genuinely fell in love. But my like truest self, my
Right.
truest self was the one that was a seeker. And I was getting books on spiritual topics in grade school, and you know, and science and
Yeah.
spiritual, like both. And my teachers were like, "Why are you reading that?" And I'm like, "I don't know, I just want to
For
read it."
fun.
I know. And in high school, you know, a relationship broke up, and I was like, had all these books, and I was reading, and I was in prayer. And like I said, I was kind of a weird teenager, but that I think that was my truest self.
Right.
And then the other part of me was who my parents thought that I was. And so like how I just described myself, my truest self, that's how I live now. Like
Right.
I'm the hermit spiritual seeker. I do love to spend time with people, but maybe just once a week. Like, and then the
Right.
rest
Then
go
get
back,
back.
go back.
Go back. Go back.
Yeah, yeah. So this is really fun. I'm sharing stuff I haven't shared with people in a very long time. So you guys are seeing. Anyway, what's the next question?
The next one was who was your first mentor? But I think you mentioned that it was the
I had one particular high school youth group leader, and she happened to live across the street. And so I would go across the street and I would talk to her. And we maintained that relationship all through high school. And then there were some things that changed when I went to college. And so we didn't really maintain that after that.
mhm.
But that was just a real lifesaver to be able
Yeah.
to have her just, I don't know that she like taught me skills or information, but just she helped validate my experiences,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, to be able to speak aloud about it. I
Mhm.
didn't speak aloud about it for till I was grown in my 40s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You know, I don't know if you're going to ask this later, but I can talk about, I am interested in talking about other mentors.
yeah, go ahead. I
Okay.
love the fact that you had mentors at a young age because
Yeah.
that
Well,
to be able to talk about it with somebody.
yeah. So that really was a blessing. Um, and it's good for me to get that feedback because
Mhm.
actually, you know, sometimes we're kind of we have our own interpretations of our lives, and then we hear someone else mirror to us, and it's like, oh yeah, I was really blessed to have that. I
Yeah,
I really was, because the
just
thing,
just speak it out loud.
yeah, because one of the feelings that I have had over the many years of my adulthood has been a feeling of frustration and a little bit of sadness and like feeling like I'm missing out or something, because
Mhm.
as an adult, I never did really find very many good mentors.
Mhm.
And I will speak about a few of them, but somebody last December or this past December and was asking me, "Oh, who did you mentor with for psychic protection?" And
Right.
I'll talk about that in a minute because it's like,
Right.
mm, there
Nobody.
has been, I haven't found anybody, you know.
Right.
But I'll talk about that in a second. But I did have I studied with a variety of people briefly in my 20s when I first started to study energy healing, because I didn't have any experiences with energy healing until I was an adult in my 20s.
Mhm.
So I had a lot of psychic and paranormal experiences as a child, but nothing. that would be described as energy healing or any knowledge of energy healing. But I started to learn about energy healing because I was living in a small town, and the manager of the nutrition store told me about Reiki and about some other things. And so I started seeking out classes, and I would take actually I started studying Reiki 25 years ago, before it was popular. And I really liked my first Reiki teacher. She was a very elderly woman. So she wasn't like new age,
Right.
la la land person. She was this old lady who was just really nice. And that was why I chose her, because the first person that I met, because like now everybody does Reiki, but back then I found one person in my town who did Reiki. And she was very like spiritual channeling, la la la. And even though back then I didn't know about false light like I do now,
Right.
I still was like, I don't really want to learn from that lady. Like, she's nice
Right.
and
She's so
everything, but
ungrounded.
she is like, I don't really, yeah. But then I found out about this wonderful old lady in the next town, and I took my first Reiki classes with her. And most people know nowadays Reiki classes are usually one day. So it wasn't an
Yeah.
ongoing mentorship. It was just like that block of time. And then I also did some learning of like more formal psychic development studies here and there with someone named Sharon Landreth. And I don't know if she's still living or if she's on the other side or not, but she went on, and this was in that small town in Kansas. She went on to teach at the Omega Institute later, after I worked with her. Um, and I worked with her only in like a group setting, not private mentoring. Um, then when I hit into my 30s, 40s, and 50s, the mentors that I was finding were not very good mentors. They were confused about integrity, lack of integrity, lack of professional boundaries. I did forget to mention one person that was kind of a mixed situation. Um, in my, what was it? Was I in my 30s? In my 30s, there were several years where I was working with a woman who, mostly it was in groups that she was leading. These were where we learned shamanic methods. I also learned more formally, like I was able to get more direction in how to use oracle cards and tarot cards and pendulum, which I already sort of knew how to use, but in her classes, she was teaching that. And so I developed more mastery of that. But mostly what I got from her was the ability to connect with the earth in a different way. Now, she was not indigenous Native American blood, but her but I think we can all be connected with the earth, right? So, but just clarifying, this was not specifically Native American teachings.
Right.
But there were some really confused, some not great things that she was teaching, like very staunch positive vibes only. You're not allowed to ever say anything negative.
Right.
It was very like toxic positivity. And that's when I stopped going. And it was also body shaming. There were some overweight people. Now, she wasn't trying to body shame. She really believed what she was teaching. She really believed what she was teaching, but there were some, I was thinner than I am now when I was attending that group, but there were some other people who were curvier gals. She was teaching that any extra weight means that you have stuck energy. And a couple of the participants were teenage young women, and I just almost lost it. I was like, this is so freaking harmful. And that
Yeah.
was the same meeting where I was trying to be authentic and share about some things on my heart. And she was like, no, 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 cancel, clear, delete, don't say anything negative. And I was like,
Gracious.
I'm done with this shit. I never went back. I
Oh
never
my
went back.
God.
I did have the opportunity to tell her. I had a conversation with her a few years later, and I explained to her why I never came back. And I think we have a good professional relationship now, like as
Okay.
peers. So that's good. And I did, so like I said, it was a mixed bag because I really did get a lot from our work together.
Mm-hmm.
And like there was one practice that she taught us where we were supposed to choose a plant. And so we would meet once a month and we were supposed to choose a plant. And every day we were supposed to sit with that plant and develop a relationship with it. And hopefully outdoors to find a native plant, sit
Right.
outdoors. But if you couldn't, you could do one indoors. And you were to sit there and listen and receive whatever the plant energy, whatever the plant medicine wanted to share with you. And I
Mm-hmm.
started, and it was a wonderful experience. And I started to have other experiences where I would be digging in the dirt, planting in the flower garden, and I would receive messages from other plants about herbs that I should take that were
Oh,
going to help heal, whatever condition I was dealing with at the time. And it was just really, it was a magical experience being a part of that group until it wasn't anymore. You know what I mean?
right.
And then I knew I like my bubble was burst and I was like, I can't go back. There's some unhealthy things here. And then after that, I had a whole string of people that I tried to study with who, really were what I'll call spiritual predators, the type of people that I talk about in my third book, The Dark
Right.
Side. I forget the name of my third book, The Dark Side of Spiritual Healers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
It's a long title.
Oh,
Yeah. And so there were various people that had different levels of predatory behaviors.
hmm
And really toxic and dysfunctional behaviors. And so, like, I tried to retake some of my levels of energy healing that I had taken in my 20s, tried to retake those in my late 30s and my 40s. And yeah, there was some not great experiences. And so I actually went back and undid the attunements that they did on me because
mm
I was like, I don't want them to have access to my energy
Right.
because that was not a good experience. And I'm being vague out of respect for, like, I'm not going to be calling out people, but just
Right.
talking about the fact that I did have several experiences that were not great. And then I'll end this question by saying that after I really had that awakening about um, the subject of psychic protection, when I went through my situation in 2016, I always felt like, well, whatever, like you should always try to seek mentors who know more than you do so you can learn from them.
Mhm.
Um, and I was trying to find like anybody who knew as much as I did about psychic protection. And then I did find a shaman who is world renowned. And out of respect, I'm not going to say the name of who it is,
Mhm.
and I found his information online and I was so excited because even though
Right.
he wasn't talking about all the layers and levels and scope of what I talk about, he was teaching and talking about entity extraction and soul retrieval. And I was like, yes, okay, great. So
That's my next subject.
I was so excited. And
Right.
then I bought one of his books on Kindle and I was reading the introduction and I started to cry because he was talking about how he had been very ill and he received a healing from John of God, who is a major spiritual predator. I think John of God was in Brazil. Is that right? Um,
hmm
Major. I'll just let you Google him. I won't go into his whole story.
Right.
My, so John of God was very popular with the Kansas City spiritual community when I was in Kansas City. And everybody kept trying to get me to go and do a pilgrimage down there. And I was like, I don't have a good feeling about this. So I pulled up John of God's website. I looked at his picture, and even before I had that psychic protection awakening, so this was before then, I pulled up the picture and I immediately knew this person has multiple negative entities attached to him. This is very, very dark. And yes, he is healing people. That's confusing because some people are experiencing healings, but it's through these negative entities that are then feeding. It's this weird thing where then they're feeding off of them. And there were a lot of, and looked at his face and I was like, he's a major sexual predator. Well, about a year later, he turned himself in
I didn't know that.
He spent time in prison for some of the horrible things that he did. So when I knew this mentor that I was thinking about working with, this shaman that I was thinking about working with, had received, quote, healing from a major dark player of the web of dark forces, I was like, there's no way I can ever like be hooked into that. I can't. And so then that was my last attempt to find a mentor in psychic protection. But honestly, I've accepted now that now I don't think that I have more knowledge than everyone on the planet. Like there are other people who have all sorts of levels of esoteric knowledge that I'll probably never have. But what I know about entities and psychic protection and spiritual awareness, like what I know, I haven't met anyone else who knows that. And I'll say this other thing too. A couple of years ago, I was like, I still felt like I need to be working with a mentor. I need to find someone. So a friend recommended someone that she knew who does understand about spiritual warfare from his perspective as a fundamentalist Christian man. And I will emphasize that he is a very nice man, and I think a very spiritual man, a very religious man who has a very strong faith. And I think he has knowledge in his scope of knowledge, right? He has his own knowledge. I think he really, really wanted to help me. I think he really liked me, and really wanted to be a mentor for me. But what I kept finding over and over again was that we would be on a session and I would tell him about a situation. Like I told him about how, I went to, I'm not going to go into all the details here, but I went to a local event that turned out to be very unsafe spiritually. Okay. And there was someone, and I have told my Academy members about this story. It involves a butcher knife. I don't know if you remember this story, but it was very unsafe. There was someone at this house, like afternoon potluck thing that was very controlled by negative forces. And so it was very unsafe. Like this person was going to attack me. Okay. And so this mentor that I was working with was like, well, you've talked about feeling really isolated in your role. So I'm really glad that you got out of the house. And that was a big win. And I was like, you're like,
you're wrong.
Like I almost got stabbed to death, like that's totally. And I was like, he does not understand the level of physical danger that can occur with some people when they're when they're around other humans who are being run by dark or demonic forces. Like they're serious. Like you got to be aware, like Kristie and I were talking about at the beginning. Once you have awareness then like if you have been a targeted individual, you develop awareness, and then like now I know I'm not going to any potlucks in this neighborhood, and that's fine. I'm perfectly happy. But for it to be recommended that, oh, are you going to go again? And like, no, of course I'm not going to go to that again.
Why do
So there
you
was a
think
lot of so there was a lot of
do you
bad
think
advice, but well-meaning.
why do you think that your guides and do did they just let you come to your own conclusions?
Yes. Okay. So
Right.
I know I'm being vague about this story, and there's a lot of I do open up a lot more to the students in my academy, and it's not out of any ill will to the public, but it's more just for my own safety. There are certain things that I share more openly, in that more private container.
Okay.
But in that circumstance that I'm like vaguely speaking about, where there was some danger, that was a very interesting situation. In fact, for a day or two before that event, when I would sit in my morning meditation, I kept getting the information that that event was dangerous for me.
Mm.
And normally, if something is dangerous for me, I say, okay, well, I'm not going. No duh, I'm not
Right.
going, like, of
Right.
course, I'll go do something else. But when I checked in, because I will always double and triple check things like, okay, so this is not safe. Okay, does that mean that I'm not supposed to go? And
Right.
this was coming like the main place that I connect with for my questions when I'm asking for answers and truth is my inner self. I'm checking in with my soul, or I call it inner guidance, whatever you want to call it. And it was like, well, you are supposed to go. You are supposed to go. And you are supposed to make sure that this is what sounds so weird. It was like, normally I would never go to something like this, but I just felt it was so clear. It was, you are supposed to go to this, and do not eat or drink anything that they give you. And you keep your car keys on you at all times.
Oh
And
my God.
so when it came down to it, and this person that I am 1,000% positive that she had a demon attached to her that recognized me, right? And hate from the second that I walked in the door, I was like, that's the person. I knew
Yeah.
right away.
Right.
And so I made sure that I sat, this sounds so crazy that I even went to this thing, but I made sure that I sat where I could get to the door, because when I walked in the door, they said, oh, why don't you sit over there? It was like a sectional couch where
Right.
once you get in there, you can't get out. Like you got to climb over the back of the couch to get out the door.
Right.
And so I was like, no, thanks. I'll sit at the kitchen
Oh,
table
thank you.
where I can just like go take a straight line out the door. And I think so. Long story short, I think it was a practice in being able to being able to utilize my discernment, being able to walk into a place that had some danger, and to navigate that,
Yeah.
because mostly I believe this. I know other people have different approaches that are much more aggressive, but I believe in choosing my battles. I'm
Mhm.
not going to typically go to something like that, to an event like that, knowing that it's unsafe. I'm typically going to save my battles for when I'm working with my clients,
Right.
when they are dealing to help them with spiritual warfare. I'm not going to go to some event or situation where I'm going to be put in danger, or I have to do major clearing afterwards. So in my personal life, I'm very choosy who I spend
Mhm.
time with and what I do, because again, I choose my battles. So it was very unusual that I even went to this, but I just felt so strong. I knew that it was unsafe, and I knew that I was supposed to go. And so the funny thing was that I have a particular food that I'm not going to name that I'm very allergic to. And I'm sitting there at the kitchen table, and they're bringing out the potluck food, and they're like, would you like some of this? Would you like some of this? Would you like some of this? Every single one of those foods had the ingredient that I'm allergic to. No,
Oh my
not
God.
kidding. Not kidding. And I was like, they're trying to kill me.
They're
Okay.
trying to
I
really
mean,
kill me.
or make me unwell,
Right.
make me unwell. So they probably weren't trying to kill me, but
Right.
whatever. But to make me unwell. So that was one situation where um I call it the learning boot camp. We have different members in the academy, yourself included, Kristie, that there are situations that arise where I'm like, oh, you're being presented with a boot camp. Like you're supposed to learn from this. You're supposed to, whether it's learn discernment or protection or whatever. Sometimes we're put through different lessons.
Right.
So that, yeah. But after that, when my mentor at the time was like, oh, you should keep going back, I was like,
Right.
that's the worst advice ever.
You're
I'm
not,
like,
you're not
that's
going to be my mentor.
no, no. And I want to emphasize, really great guy, really
Right.
great guy. But I was like, he needs to be like I just kept having to explain everything to him, and I was like, he needs to be taking my classes because he's
Right.
well, but no, I don't think he needs. He's on his own path. But I
I
was
know.
like, but he just didn't. He didn't have like the scope of understanding. He had a smaller scope that was more of the scope of his particular religion, and he didn't know all of the other stuff. So
Right.
so that was my final mentor, and I finally was like, okay, I've just been mentoring myself, and
Right.
I've accepted that.
That was the point of it that I was
Hmm.
saying that
Hmm.
do you think that your guides were saying for you to realize that there were no more mentors, that you were at the top of this particular, genre?
Well, that brings up a good point, and it's actually something that I've been kind of fighting against internally for a long time,
Mhm.
because obviously I kept feeling like I wanted a mentor. I wanted someone ahead of me who could tell me
Right.
that everything's okay. Like, it's okay, Maya, you're
Right.
going to be okay. Like what I do for you
Right.
guys, like,
That's very comforting.
I was like, I really want that. And I want someone to guide me. And I kept wanting that. But at the same time, I kept getting this imagery. Uh, it was this imagery of um, people in a line, like out in the like out in nature, people
Mhm.
out, like, I don't know, out on the prairie, or the pioneer, like the pioneers on the prairie. We're all in a line, and I just happened to be the first person
Right.
in the, like, not that I'm special or whatever, it's
Right.
just I just happened to be the first person in the line. And then there are others who are equally significant, who are following behind in the line, and I just happen to be the first in the line. Now, there are
Right.
other people who talk about some of the things that I talk about, like false light, but
Hmm.
I still have continued to feel like we're not quite on the same wavelength. Like we're not
Right.
in the same, like we're not the same line, the same lineage. And so I've accepted that, like, I've accepted the role. I've really come into more peace in the last year. Believe me, it is. I went through years of like this inner struggle of wanting things to be different. But
Hmm.
I've come to accept and have more peace of being the pioneer, like the pioneering person, like the first person bringing forth certain information. And there isn't that person. Like, I joke that I need my own personal Maya. There's like telling me
Right.
that everything's okay. Because sometimes when things get hard, but I don't have that. But I've done a lot of internal healing. I've really felt the shift, especially in the last 6 months, where I'm like, okay,
Really.
okay, I think I have this more of an acceptance and an inner peace of this
Right.
role. And being a way shower, because there are many people on the planet who are in a role of pioneer and way shower
Mm,
with different things in science, in music, in like whatever area that you might name. They might not have mentors directly ahead of them, right?
mhm.
Like they are the one coming up with the new idea or
Right.
bringing forth the new idea. So we have, thousands upon thousands of pioneers on the planet.
Mhm.
But so just want to acknowledge that, like I'm not the only pioneer. But
Right.
it's been a role that I spent a few years grappling with. But now I have more acceptance of it.
Right. Yes, it is. It's very comforting to know that there is somebody like you, because I don't think I would have made it through,
Yeah.
without all of your help, and just I had to, but I had to, learn to trust you very quickly.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
it just happened.
mhm. Well, I will also say that, as ethical as I am in wanting to maintain roles where there's not a confusion of professional roles, um, and so, when people join the academy, I understand that I'm the facilitator and I'm not
Mhm.
calling up members and saying, "Can you
Right.
give me advice on this?" Because
Right.
that's not the established roles that we have together. But I will. So with that said, though, I receive comfort being a part of our academy and being a part of even our free group coming
Right.
on here on Zoom. It is a comfort to me to know that there are like-minded souls. Just that is a comfort to me,
Yeah.
and I receive a lot. Thank you for the air kisses. I do receive a
Mhm.
lot from that. It really feeds my soul.
Yeah. Well, it saved my soul. um I know one of the good questions was, what was a psychic protection tool that you found very effective for yourself, because everybody's going to be different, but
Mhm.
what that you were surprised about, that was something simple, or just a tool that you really found helpful.
So now more as an adult. So we're not talking about childhood because we
Right.
talked about in my adolescence, the rosary was my go-to. I wore that around my neck all the time. But as an adult, as I have really delved into the area of psychic protection, one of the methods that continues to surprise me, how well it works, that I'm just like, wow, is the reversal candle
Oh
that
yeah.
I teach. Now, I didn't originally come up with that method. It's originally from hoodoo practices.
Hmm.
It's a particular type of candle. Well, I'm not going to describe it today, but you can always look at my first book, Darkness Disguised as
This
Light,
first book. Yeah.
or you can just Google reversal candle and you can go down a little rabbit hole and learn about that. But there are complicated ways that you can do it, but there are simple ways that you can do it.
Mhm.
And I'm all about simplicity. That's just
Yeah.
me. And I think
Well,
if people want to add more complexity, that's great
right.
and that works for them. But I've had instances where some um, people, so I'm going to specify living people, so not just entity issues, but I've had some very powerful some people who are very powerful who are misusing their spiritual abilities try
Mhm.
to attack me.
Yeah.
And literally just by using a reversal candle, that took care of sending most of that negative energy back. And
Right.
I'm constantly surprised by it. I'm burning one right now over there.
Right.
Because there was a weird, a, because I work with so many people who are under psychic attack, and some of them are under attack by living people, not entities, by people
Right.
who are dark shamans, satanic witches, like what a whole list of all the different people. And so I do cloak very carefully when I do that work. But I also, like every once in a while, one of those people will get a peek at me. It's very rare. And so I use the reversal candle to just like anything that they're trying to send at me to get
Yeah.
me to stop helping the client. I just keep reversing it. I keep reversing it. There was a situation a couple of years ago where there's someone in a city where I used to live who who was powerful enough that she had murdered people through magic.
Mm.
Okay. And I got on her radar accidentally. It's a long story, but I accidentally got on her radar um, by contacting someone that she's friends with, and I didn't realize it until later. And then immediately, like within that day, there were signs of attack, indications of psychic attack. All of a sudden, the water in my house all shut off. My car wouldn't start. I forget what else happened, but it was like classic psychic attack. It was like,
Right.
I have a whole list of symptoms in darkness disguised as light. And I was like, oh, geez, I better take care of this. And so I did some, like my usual go-to is just using my mind and
Right.
meditation. I can clear out a ton of, I'm at the point now where I don't
Right.
need the physical tools. I can just push stuff out and I don't need all the bells and whistles anymore. But
Right.
when it came to her, I did need to do a physical action. And
Mhm.
as soon as I started using the candle, within 12 hours, everything was cleared. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, I was impressed because this is a lady who's murdered people with
Right.
magic. And
Right.
she has since passed away. So, and hopefully she
Mm.
is healed wherever she is.
Right.
Hopefully she's healed. So the candle is my most surprising, like, wow, I can't
Mm.
believe how well that works, especially when it's used right at the beginning of the issue.
Right.
When it's used 10 years after the issue started, it's going to take you probably like months of candle burning, and that's
Right.
fine. You got to be
Right.
persistent. But if it's done right away,
Mhm.
in an immediate sort of way, then it's like, wow, I can't believe how well that works.
Yeah.
But my daily go-to is just I meditate, or I call it meditate, but some people wouldn't. I go sit out in nature, out in my
Right.
backyard, and I stare at the mountain, and then I become aware of what's going on in my energy, what's going on in the in like around my property, and I just give instructions like this needs to move out. I
Right.
just so just using my will.
I love the candles. I
I
agree.
know they're so easy, you
It's
guys.
so
You
easy.
don't have to have special knowledge. And
Mhm.
some of our members make their own candles, which is cool. But or you can buy them. It's okay either way. I buy them,
Yeah.
but I have
Okay.
I have aspirations of making my own at some point. I just haven't had time.
I know. Um, so do you have any new books in the works?
Mm,
And well, let me ask you this first. So you've written and self-published three amazing books. Would you
thank you.
ever would you ever consider working with a publishing company?
I'm so glad you asked about this because I don't think that I've talked about this in a long time. Like I've probably mentioned it somewhere in some tiny place years ago. So I originally was going to publish my first book through Hay House. And
Mm.
Hay House is a
Yeah.
spiritual publishing company. Um, I do have some thoughts on Hay House. I'm not gonna. I mean, I'll just say I think there's a lot of false light. I think there's a lot of
Right.
false light, but I'm not trying to disparage a whole company. I mean, pretty much every corner of popular spirituality has a lot of false light. So I'm not
Mm.
trying to disparage a whole publishing company. But I was going to publish through them. I had the manuscript of my book done, of my first book. And I get it. I understand where they were coming from, but I didn't agree that because they are just very careful about legal issues,
Mm-hmm.
they they wanted me to change a whole bunch of details
Oh, I
about
didn't
the
know.
book.
Mm-hmm.
And they also wanted me to use a pen name and not my real name. So that everything that I was sharing about what happened to me couldn't be identified because they didn't want someone to come and say, that's about me. You know, that they were being slandered or libeled or whatever.
Right.
And that like they didn't want to come back on them. And I said, well, all due respect, why would I be writing a book like this and like people can't find me because it's through this like secret name? And
Right.
I was like, no, I need to be able to tell my story how it really happened. And then of course, I this is standard in writing. I did make some details vague on purpose because I needed to keep people's identities confidential. That was my intent. I changed a few details, like little details about like what physical objects looked like. There were some physical objects that I described, and I made them different than they actually were, just so that individuals would not be identified,
Mm-hmm.
but just out of respect, but also for legal concerns. Because if you do
Right.
write a book and you're identifying that someone did bad things, like, the person might not like it.
They may
Um,
not.
so even when I decided to self-publish, I did change names and identities and things like that in actually all of my books. That's just standard because I have to protect myself and I protect the other people, including those who did things
Mm-hmm.
that weren't that great. So I respectfully said no
Yeah.
to Hay House. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. No, thank you. And then I self-published and I never looked back. I did. I was getting emails from a couple of publishing companies, and I even sent one to Stephanie one time, and I said, "What do you think?" And she was like, "No, lots of dark energy." And I was like,
Uh,
yeah, like I don't. So, but the question was, if a publishing company ever approached me, would I consider it? I would be thrilled
right.
if a legitimate publishing company, like not just somebody doing it out of their garage, but like a real publishing company contacted me. Um, but I still would be making the ethical decision. I would be saying, is this a company is this a publishing company that really cares about putting forth the truth?
Right.
Or are they, because the thing about publishing, and this is true with most people who publish, who are like famous authors who publish
Mm-hmm.
with big companies, the publishing company says, we don't like this section. You have to take out this whole chapter
Mm-hmm.
and you have to change these details. Like that's standard. That is just publishing.
Right.
And my interest is in the truth. And
Right.
that means that I make like $20 a month off of my books
I
because
know.
I would rather, because it's a labor of love. It's a labor of
Right.
love.
Right. That's
And I would
exactly like.
rather have the truth get out there than than have high numbers. That's my philosophy. So are there any other books in the works?
Yes. And
Okay.
and tell us a little sneak peek if you can.
Okay. Okay. All right. So far I've got 3 books. The first one tells my origin story, how I got started in this work, and also gives information about psychic protection. The next one is like kablam. It's like an explosion of psychic protection, like pretty deep stuff of
Right.
like it was basically like all like Maya's brain dumped out on into a book of the awakening that I had after my attack in 2016. And then the third book is all about spiritual predators in spiritual communities. The first 3 books, especially number 2 and number 3, I felt very um I'm trying to think of the right word. Like I just felt such a push to complete those books. Like I need to hurry up and get them done because, and I'll share something that I've really only shared with my Academy members. I was having a lot of really serious medical issues that were of, the original cause was genetic. And I was like, I have to finish my second book or my third book. Like, I have to finish it just in case if I die. I have to get this out. I have to get this out there. I have to get this out there. So the second book, I was like, uh, really struggling. I'm not going to, because this goes out to the public, I'm not going to be specific what the issues were. But I was like, I got to get that second book done. And I was like busting my butt getting that out there to make sure that it got out. There was such a push. And then I didn't feel as intense of a push by the third book, but it was still like, this has to get out there. And then this past year, I experienced, and I'm going to do a video about this separately at some point. I experienced incremental healing, and it was a very difficult process. It wasn't all at once. And in fact, I've spent many years doing self-healing. And it just so happened that on this particular year, I was able to experience some breakthroughs, and I feel very confident. Well, I actually had an exit date where I was supposed to leave last summer, and I didn't. And I made an agreement with the powers that be. I said, I'm staying. I do not want to leave and have to start over in a new body with this mission. I'm staying. And if I'm staying, I expect for the excruciating pain to go away. I expect for the health to improve dramatically. Even if it's not perfect, I expect major breakthrough. And I had to rewrite my timeline in order to not exit. I had to do very intense advanced energy work to rewrite my timeline so that I wouldn't exit. And I didn't, so I am still here. I'm going to write I'm going to do a video or an article about how, like basically this past year, this is the start of my new life, and I'm going to be here for many more years. And I know it for a fact. But the energy of the first 3 books was like this sense of urgency, like I've got to get this out there just in case. And then after I finished the third book, I said, okay, I'm forcing myself to take 6 months of no writing. And it was when I was also working on some other levels of healing. And I said, I'm just going to focus on healing. I'm going to focus on my Academy students. And that's it. I'm going to give myself 6 months. That way, when I get ready to start writing, then I have a lot more clarity and I'm ready and I know exactly what I want to write next. Well, something interesting happened, and I don't want y'all to be disappointed, but that 6 months, like I would normally have started writing now in January. But the clarity that came to me over the last couple of months was this clarity about how I had to get those first 3 books done. And it feels like now there's supposed to be some space between the first 3 books and whatever comes next.
Mhm.
And so I'm planning on, I might change my mind, but I'm planning on taking 2025 to just not write and just
Right.
let things gel, let more inner awakening come forth, which will then go into writing later.
Right.
Focus on my academy students, continue to cultivate even more healing, and just chill for a minute. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because I'm a very driven person too. And I'm like,
Right.
I'm making myself just chill for a little while.
Right.
But I will tell you, I already know that there are many more books coming. And I had a premonition when I was teaching one of the academy classes, and I took us through a guided journey of connecting us with our future self.
Mhm.
Some of you were in that class, and I was very surprised because I saw myself at 90 years old.
Mhm.
I was 90 years old, and I was like,
Wow.
well, that's a lot older than I thought I was going to live, you know? And
Right.
so I truly believe there are many more years. And I know that I already have a list on my computer of all
You do.
these other books. So I don't know yet. I've kind of waffled between a couple of different topics for the next book. Even when I thought I was going to start writing in January, but now that I'm going to take a longer break, that
Right.
will give me more time to not decide here, but to come into knowing of what's supposed to come next. So there is a
Right.
book coming that is specifically to teach healers and spiritual workers um, how to be in that leadership role in a way that is ethical, how to keep their energy clean and clear, how to clear a space,
Mm.
how to lead a group of people while and maintaining spiritual safety so they're not all passing cooties to each other. All these
Right.
all the things that I talk about in my third book of all the problems in the spiritual communities, uh, that there's a book coming where I'm teaching people this is how you can be in that spiritual leadership role in a way that's ethical and in a way that's truly serving your people, your clients and your students.
It's so
And
important.
it's basically going to be a handbook for healers. There's another book coming that is Darkness Disguised as Light Part 2.
Oh,
And
okay.
there are so many more things that I've gone through that I haven't had the opportunity to even tell people about. In Darkness Disguised as Light Part 1, the one that's out there in the world, I had a major encounter with a jinn. Well, I then moved to Arizona. I've had other encounters with jinn. I've had other demonic encounters. I've had all these different situations. And so it'll be the same format where each chapter is the next, is telling the next part of my story. And then at the end of each chapter is a lesson of
Oh,
that
that's good.
ties in. And that's the same format as Darkness Disguised as Light.
Right.
I also plan to write a book that is specifically teaching about false light. And
So
that's
important.
very needed, very needed. And then there's a whole
Very
list of
needed.
other books. There's a whole list of other books that are needed.
Mhm.
So, um, and I know this is like semi-related to the question, and I feel like I want to say it. I've said this to the students in my academy a few times. I don't know, I may have said it in these public videos, but um, for a while now, I have felt like the things that I'm teaching and talking about are about 10 years before their time.
Mm.
Like I'm early. I showed up early with this message.
Right.
I started to feel that way a couple of years ago. So now it's like 8 years before my time. And what I mean by that is that like the popular spirituality world out there, they don't want to hear about this stuff.
No.
at all, at
Mm-mm.
all. And this is why I think I did talk about this in one of our Zoom classes here, because I think there was one class where I told you guys how much I appreciate each one of you for being a spiritual seeker, for showing up, for showing up here, or just showing up in your own life as a spiritual seeker, as someone looking past whatever's popular and trying to find out what's really going on. And I
Right.
don't ever expect people to just believe whatever I say just because Maya said it. But what I really want is for you to just be learning whatever you can, and then running it through your own inner filter and
Right.
really seeking the truth. And you all are the forerunners. You're all pioneers. Like, you're really at the beginning of this movement. And there was someone in our academy who asked a question, which we're not going to get to today, but I'll answer it for her later. She was wanting to know what's coming with my work in the future. And I
Right.
was like, oh, wow, that's really exciting, because now that I'm going to still be here, perhaps till I'm 90.
Right.
So I've got like
Right.
decades ahead of me. I was like, wow, okay, well, psychically, what I see on the timeline
Mm-hmm.
is that there are still more years, about 8 years ahead on the timeline, where there's a lag, where a lot of people don't want to hear about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take that personally, by the way. That just is what it is. It's just, it's kind of shitty. Like, I wish more people were waking up, but it's just taking people a little while. It's taking
Yeah.
people a little while. So there's a bit of a lag. And so there's about 8 years of me just keeping on, just doing more of this. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
writing a couple more books during that time. I'll be still showing up. As you can tell, I'm very consistent. Like I say, I show up. I say I'm going to show up every month. We show up.
Right.
And so I'm just going to keep on keeping on. I'm going to keep on doing the same thing, and sharing messages with all of you. And then I think there's going to be a shift in the global consciousness in about 8 years,
Eight.
where you're going to see more people waking up to what you all have woken up to early. You've woken up early, which is great. But it's going to take about 8 more years for like more of the collective to wake up to where, I can change my offerings or change things up in order to serve the community in a different way. But that's not really going to be called for yet until then. So for now, lean into the community that you have. And I know it's just a small but mighty group of us. But like I said in my academy recently, like we're small, but we're making waves, little ripples out into the time space continuum. Yeah, and we're making ripples, we're making
Yeah.
waves. Yeah.
Well, so do you want to not do the questions from the group, or do you?
I think we might not have time
Okay.
because it's the top of the hour. Um, but but I will answer. So those questions from the academy, will have a dedicated time
Okay.
next month where I will answer all of those. We do every once in a while, we do an Ask Maya Anything in the academy, and you can ask me everything from like, I don't care, like what kind of toothpaste I use, to like, have I had any alien experiences, and do I believe that we're in a matrix reality? Like, you can literally ask me anything, for like personal, spiritual, whatever.
Lots of
Um,
good questions always.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and of course, I figured it would take, with these questions, it's like if we really relax into it like we did today,
Yeah.
just taking our time answering. We were not able to get through all of them. But I want to read the chat here real quick before we zoom off, because I've got another group that I help with at the top of the hour. Anon says, where do we go to find the older interviews with Maya, the ones Maya mentioned at the beginning of this call? Older interviews. I'm not sure if I was referring to something, but I can tell you, I don't know, older interviews. I mentioned that I have gotten on with Stephanie before, but that wasn't an interview. It was, she and I were talking about frankincense and house clearings, but it wasn't this kind of thing that Kristie
Oh,
and
that's right. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. But FYI, everybody, in the on the YouTube channel, if you go to YouTube and type in Psychic Protection Sanctuary, you'll find my channel. Yeah, there's a playlist that is I forget what it's called. It's like oh shoot, it's like guest appearances with Maya, or guest appearances by Maya, or something like that. And it's where I've been a guest on other people's podcasts. It was different.
So
it was different than this. They weren't asking me personal questions, but more just about psychic protection and stuff. But that might be interesting for some of you. Oh, and Veronica. Yeah, thank you, Veronica. Veronica commented and explained what I just explained. Jamie L says, we're so blessed to be here in this community. Absolutely. And the blessing is mutual. Rose says, thanks so much to both of you. Anon says, looking forward to the Academy session. Thank you, Maya and Kristie. Great discussion. Yes. So any of you, we do have people here live who are in Spiritual Empowerment Academy. We will have an Ask Maya Anything in February. Starting to lose my voice here. And so you can look forward to that. That'll be fun. Those are always fun. But this is the first time that we've done this kind of interview process. So what did you guys think? Yeah, interesting, kind of different. We have some, I forgot what topics that we have coming up in coming months, but we have already chosen some of our regular topics. So we're going to not do an interview next month. We're going to do one of our exciting psychic protection topics for next month's Zoom class. So stay tuned. I'll post about that later because I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But oh, I know. Our next topic is like back to basics. It's what to do if you're under psychic attack. And in parentheses, black magic, curse, hex, entity, and other, like any kind of psychic attack. What to do if you're under psychic attack.
That was one of my questions.
back to basics.
Right.
Yeah. And then the month after that, so that's February. And then in March, we're going to have a class where I talk about psychic attack via astral travel. And so astral travel is when someone who's alive, exits their body, and their astral body, they have the ability to do that consciously and willingly. They exit their body and they go visit someone and psychically attack them. And this is something that's commonly done by dark shamans and other unethical spiritual practitioners who are misusing their powers. And they'll go and visit their client at night and do all sorts of things. And so we're going to talk about that in March. So we have some interesting topics coming up. Thank you so much, everybody. Jamie L wants to know if I've ever talked about walk-ins. I am going to talk about, I'm going to do one of my mini lessons on walk-ins, because I do have something to say about walk-ins. I'm not going to explain. If you don't know what they are, you'll have to stay tuned for the little mini lesson. So thank you so much, Kristie, for
Thank you.
helping
Thank
with
you.
this. I really
Mhm.
appreciate it. Thank you
No, it
so
was
much.
my pleasure. It was great.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for being here. I really appreciate each one of you. And thank you for being on like the pioneer journeys. I don't know what to call it. The pioneer journey exploration. I don't know, but thank you all for being a part of it. And you're all brave souls for stepping outside of what is comfortable and popular. So thank you for being who you are. Trailblazers is a good word. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kateri. Thank you all for being trailblazers. We're all trailblazers. All of you are. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
And blessings for an amazing 2025 as we all continue to be here on this planet, creating amazing things. Thank you. Lots of
Thank you.
blessings.
Bye.